Hey guys, it's Deborah, and it's that time of week again. It's time for episode number 11 of Diary of a Physicist Farmgal. This is a podcast that is about my crafting, which I like to do all the crafts. I knit, I crochet, I sew, I quilt, I make baskets, I like to make jewelry, I like to draw, I like to paint. Pretty much anything I can get my hands on, needlework, whatever. My craft room basically looks like a craft supply store threw up in it, which that's okay with me. I am also a professor of physics and astronomy at a local four-year university where I teach physics majors courses. I work with students on research projects. I also volunteer my time to be involved in programs for young women interested in science, and I also do volunteer planetarium shows for school groups or community groups. I am also an Arkansas Master Naturalist, which means I took about 60 hours of training classes, and I do classes throughout the year to keep my education level up, sort of continuing education classes, which means I volunteer at local state parks or other events of that nature to help out. And I am a third generation farmer. I live on my family farm, and I have lived here. I moved back in 2005 to take over the farm from my parents, who both financially and physically were not able to keep up the family farm. So I made the decision to move back here in Arkansas. I live in the foothills of the Arkansas Ozarks, and I don't guess I've ever mentioned this, but I have 170 acres, so it's a lot to keep up with, and I don't do it great, but I try my best. I raise horses and grass-fed beef cattle. I also have rabbits and show quality birds, or show quality rabbits and birds. Mostly I have chickens, but I have some pigeons and some geese as well. And I'm also a haven to many rescue animals, including miniature horses, miniature donkeys, standard donkeys, and several dogs and cats. If you've watched this podcast before, you'll know my co-host Willie, who is in here pretty much every single time I record, but I also have a special guest today. Willie, you want to hop down? You want to share? Come here, buddy. See if I can get him. He's not as camera friendly as Willie. Oh, don't be ugly. Come here. Come here. Oh, it's okay. Come here. This is Wally, and Wally is a little nervous about being on camera. Wally is my little boy that, if you watched last week's episode, he's the one that went through the fence on me. He is a sweet little boy. I adopted him from, perhaps a little foolishly, but I suppose it was divinely inspired. I volunteered at a pet adoption last October, and while I was there, the local pound, which tries very hard to be a no-kill pound, but sometimes they just can't, they had several dogs there. One of them was a little black female dog named Reyna, and she was not very friendly, but she ended up coming up to me and getting in my lap. And then Wally also came up to me and sat in my lap, and if you'll see his sweet gray face, I know how hard it is for black dogs and older dogs to get adopted. So they were running a very special adoption discount, and they ended up coming home with me. And they were number 13 and 14 in my pack. So Wally is my little boy who is afraid of storms, and he is very much of a love bug, as you can see. So he's a sweet boy. Okay, you can get down now. I know you don't like being on camera. Whoops, there you go. Okay, so anyway, that digression. If you're looking for me on social media, my farm Facebook page is the same as my YouTube channel, which is Buckthorn Farms. I am also on Instagram and Ravelry as Doc Firewoman. There is a Ravelry group Ravelry forum group for the podcast, and on there you can learn about our charity Make-Along, where we are trying to make items for charity. And if you watch the last few podcasts, I won't go into as much detail, but pretty much charity is a very broad term. Just do some good in your community, and you can go on the Ravelry group and get some ideas. And I've also started an episode chatter thread where if you've got questions or comments about any of the episodes, you're welcome to go on there and do that. I will always post links to everything that I talk about in the information box below. I haven't been doing show notes on the Ravelry group, But anything that you're interested in, you can contact me privately on Instagram or on Ravelry, and I'll try to point you in the direction that I found it in, okay? So anyway, so I'm proud you're here. If you're a first-time viewer, welcome to the Funny Farm, and if you're a returning viewer, I'm sure tickled you stuck around with me this long. So we're going to get started here on episode number 11 of Diary of a Physicist Farmgal. Okay, everybody, I've got one half finished but technically finished object this week to show you. I was doing a test crochet for my friend Maka of Maka Makes Things, and they had designed a sock pattern. Maka has some sensitivity issues around their feet, and they had designed a sock pattern and asked me if I would test crochet it. So I have finished my test crochet of the sensitivity sock. Okay, now what I learned from this is, from the pattern, I followed the pattern as written up to a point, so my toe increase, I think if I block it, it'll help it some. The toe is a little too narrow for my toes. And then I made my heel, I guess I overcompensated, and I made the way the heel was constructed, I made the heel a little bit wonky, so I probably needed to do some more rapid decreases through here on the heel. But other than that, it fits pretty good, and I'm going to block it. I didn't even block it. I just stuck it on this sock blocker to show it today. The yarn is Red Heart, Heart and Soul. It's a wool and nylon blend yarn. I think it's 73% wool and 27% nylon. And the colorway is called Jelly Beans. I don't even know if you can still get that yarn. I've had that yarn forever. I didn't even look to see if you could still get it. But to get this size, I have a size 10B, I guess, a medium size foot. To get this size, it took me over 50 grams of yarn. So it took over, I had to break into the second little ball. Those are 50-gram balls. I had to break into the second ball to finish the sock. I think I got to about right here. But I think, of course, what I would have taken out here, I probably would have added here. So it's going to take probably more than 50 grams, because remember, crocheting always takes more yarn than knitting, seems like, does for the same product. So anyway, so I did finish my test crochet, and I sent my notes in to Maka, so hopefully that was helpful to them. We'll see. Once the pattern becomes available, I will let you know if you're interested. It is a very comfortable pattern. The fabric is thicker than what you're going to get on a knitted sock, so if you want a little bit more cushion, that might be the thing for you. These would definitely not be summertime socks for me. I don't even like to wear socks. Well, I wear socks in the summertime when I'm wearing my boots, my work boots or my riding boots. Other than that, much to the chagrin of the Nguyen's who do my pedicures, I wear flip-flops outside, and so when I go get a pedicure, I bring in a soil sample, I think, every time I go. But anyway, so yeah, so I finished my test crochet for the Sensitivity Socks by Maka Makes Things, and so that is my sort of finished object for this week. So now we're going to move on to works in progress. Okay, I have two yarny works in progress that I'll show you this week. The first one is in my Star Trek bag, my original series Star Trek characters bag by Tesla Knits. And remember, Tesla Knits is one of the donors to our charity Make-Along prizes. She has donated 4 of this size project bag and some notion sets to go with that. So I had a question. I forgot to mention this in the charity Make-Along part, but I did have a question. You can list all your FOs as separate objects. More chances to win, right? And if anybody out there would like to donate a prize, if you're listening, I'll sure take it. So anyway, so in this bag, I have my test knit for Vanessa from A Historian Knits podcast, has designed a pair of socks, and she has called them the Upson Down socks. And I am almost to the point where I'm ready to turn the heel. Now I don't know if it's okay if I show the pattern. I'll quickly show the pattern and then turn them back around. Okay. the movie reference is from Mame. It was a 1950s era movie with Rosalind Russell. I love that movie to death, and actually so does she, and we've talked about that several times. But if you remember the movie, the reference is to where Mame Dennis's nephew meets this sort of snooty but shallow girl, and her family has a summer camp, and they call it, their last name is Upson, so they call it Upson Downs, or no, that's their property, excuse me, that's their property in their highly restricted community that they live in. And so anyway, so that's the sock pattern name, and I am almost, I think when I finish this pattern repeat, I'll be ready to turn the heel on these and then finish off the pattern. I am knitting these out of a sock blank by Ballyhara Farms, which is located in North Carolina. Let me see if I can find the yarn tag. I think it's still in here. Yes, okay. It was a sock blank. I was trying to get these done in time for the sock blankathon on the Happy Knitting podcast, but I just didn't make it. But luckily, the grocery girls this month are having a bonus entry if you do a sock blank, and I think I will finish these in plenty of time. So this sock blank is Ballyhara Farms. Okay, Ballyhara Farms, and they're located in North Carolina. And they are on Etsy, and I just basically went to Etsy and typed in sock blank, and then I found one that I liked. The colorway is called Baby Elephant, and it transitions from a gray to this cream color to a lavender, back to the cream, and then back to the gray. Okay, so I'm just starting to get to the cream colored section on this one sock, and I'm almost there on the second sock. Okay, now the pattern is written cuff down, but I'm a rebel and I'm doing them toe up because I wanted the cream and the pink to be on the leg, and when I wound these I was going to do a toe up pair, and then I shifted gears and started doing this one instead. But the color again is called Baby Elephant, and it's a 75-25 superwash merino and nylon yarn. So that is by Ballyhara Farms. Okay, and there was a really cool podcast. I know I've mentioned University with Dr. Kelly before. She did a really good podcast this past week about what's the deal about superwash yarn, and went into the whole process of it and what the pros and cons are, and all of that. So I really suggest you listen to that, because like everything, it has its place in the knitting world, but it's better for some things than others, and she did a really good job of sort of breaking all that down. Oh, I dropped my pattern. breaking all that down in that podcast. So I highly recommend you check that out. So this is the Ups and Down socks by Vanessa from A Historian Knits, who also has a great podcast, so I highly recommend you check her out. And I'm going to be talking about a make-along she's going to be starting in June here in a little bit. Okay, my second work in progress, and I'm still behind on this. I'm still working on week number 2. It's kind of the story of my life. Is by the Periscoping Sisters. It's the Mother's Gift MKAL. So the Periscoping Sisters, Amy Meeks and Debbie Reese, they have a video podcast. And they have started, and they said do their make-alongs around Mother's Day, which seemed really sweet. This is the Mother's Gift MKAL. Now, if you're doing this and you don't want to be spoiled, then you can look away, but otherwise, just hang out. The 2 yarns that I'm using, I've shown these before, but this is Expressions Fiber Arts Polar Bear. This is a 50-50 merino and silk. And then this is Primrose Yarn Company. This is their Adelaide base, their sock base, that is 75-25 merino nylon. Okay, and this one has a little faint speckling of the blue that's in this. Okay, so I'm finishing up Clue 2. I got kind of nervous because there's a lot of people fussing and cussing and hollering about the last section of Clue 2. I see what they were upset about, but I guess one of the sisters, I believe it's Debbie Reese, is an engineer, and she wrote out this way to keep up with your pattern. It made perfect sense to me, but I'm a physicist, so maybe that's why. But anyway, so here is my work on that. Last time I showed this, I was down here, and so I've done all this since then. I'm done with the lace section, And there's some mistakes in there, but who cares? And I'm working on a garter section right now, and then I will start the dreaded section 6, which is just it's a left and right twist texture. Now, I looked up on the left-handed knitting. There is a really good resource online, and I can't call the gentleman's name to mind right now that has all these left-handed videos, but I looked up his directions so that he calls it a left twist and a right twist so that it leans the correct direction even if a left-handed person does it. So it's basically opposite what a right-handed person would do. But I'm going to look up his directions when I get ready to start that section. I'm going to work on these tonight. I want to get up to where I'm ready to turn the heel in these. And maybe go ahead and turn the heel in them because I've got to do a planetarium show tomorrow, and I could work on the leg of these while I'm in the planetarium show. Okay, so, and that is in my Silver Shed USA Foxes bag. So, okay, so those are my two Yarny works in progress. And so we'll come back and talk about some future crafting and some make-along information or knit-along information. Okay. Okay, I'm going to kind of combine some yarny future crafting with some make-along information, and then I'll talk about some sewing future crafting that I'm going to do. I promise you I am going to sew. It doesn't seem like it because I've been talking about it pretty much since I started, and you hadn't seen a whole lot of sewing, but sewing's fixing to happen. I got to be in the right frame of mind to sew, and I'm not there yet, but I'm almost there. Okay. All right, so the A Historian Knits podcast, she had mentioned on her latest episode that she is thinking about having a make-along or a knit-along where you go and revisit some long languishing whips or some UFOs or whatever you want to call them. And I think she had mentioned that it had to be 2 months or more since you had worked on something, so my Helen Stewart one won't qualify. but I do have one that will qualify. So go over to her page or go over to her podcast and then go to her Ravelry group. It's A Historian Knits, and check out her her stuff because I think she's going to start doing that in June, she said. Now, this shawl I have mentioned some time ago. It is the Reyna shawl, which is a very popular pattern. It's a free pattern on Ravelry, and I started it last summer. Okay. I started it. I went to my local yarn shop for the very first time last summer. I was looking for a yarn for the virus shawl that I was making. They didn't have it, but I found some beautiful yarn by Kim Marie Knitnacks in a colorway called Hippie Chick. And it's a sparkle. And she actually told me this was one of her favorite yarns to dye. Okay, and the dogs got into my nice wound skein, and so now I have little balls. I have another skein that's still wound. They only got into the one. But anyway, so it's the Reyna shawl, and I have picked it up about 2 months ago and worked on it a little bit. But it's just a series of garter rows, and then you've got some yarn over laces, and it's kind of, I don't want to say it's random because it's really not. I'm probably making it a lot more random than it should be. But, so this is going to be my thing that I'm going to work on for that, I think. Because I think this is a beautiful yarn, and I think it's going to be a pretty shawl when it's done. I'm making a crap ton of shawls. I don't know why. I think they're cool. Now I just got to wear them all, right? So, so my goal this fall when I go back to work is to try to wear my shawls, even if I'm wearing them with a dadgum hoodie and a t-shirt. Who cares? But anyway, so that's in my Tesla Knits periodic table bag, and she actually donated one of these as a prize. So if you like the periodic table like I do, you should get one, or you should enter so you could maybe win one. She has an Etsy shop too. So that's going to be for my A Historian Knit sort of languishing whip make along or knit along. So okay. The next one is, I was listening this morning to the Happy Knitting podcast with Julia, and she's just released a new sock pattern. It's called the Couch and Crackers sock. And if you go listen to her podcast, she has a coupon code that's good until the 27th. Today is May 21st, and it's good until the 27th, where you can get 20% off of the pattern. It is her first pattern, and she was very excited about it. It looks like a really neat sock pattern, and she is going to have a make-along for that. Okay, so I thought, well, cool. I'm trying to do the box of socks challenge anyway, so you know, knit a pair of socks a month at least, and I've stayed on track so far. I'm pretty proud of myself. I've stayed on track. So I bought the Couch and Crackers pattern today, and I've had this yarn for a little bit, so this will also qualify for her summer stash down make along that she has. So it's a summer stash down 2018, and you have to knit from stash. So you have to pick out yarn that you already had. It's not a yarn diet or any of that mess. I'm not a big believer in, I'm not going to buy any more yarn until I do X, Y, or Z, or I'm not going to buy whatever. Do what makes you happy. Life is short. I've been to enough estate sales to know you ain't taking it with you, so you might as well enjoy it while you got it. But anyway, so this is from Expression Fiber Arts. She is on Instagram. She is a very prolific yarn dyer. She has beautiful, beautiful colorways. This is a colorway that I showed some time ago called Unicorn Sprinkles. Okay, Unicorn Sprinkles. And it is her Resilient Sock base. So this is Resilient Superwash Merino sock. So this is 100% Superwash Merino. And it's Unicorn Sprinkles, and I just love all the bright colors in that. So that is what I'm going to make the Couch and Crackers sock out of. So that'll be a twofer, because if she does a sock knit along, and it'll be stashed, so it'll qualify for the summer stash down MKAL also. All right. I also listened to the audio podcast, The Yarniacs, and if you remember my very first episode, I talked about doing the self-indulgent knit along, where that's what kind of kick-started my knitting again. And they are having a Color of Fall knit along, I think, or the Colors of Fall, and they've got a selected palette of colors up on their Ravelry page, and it is going to run from the summer solstice until the fall equinox. So June 21st to September 21st. And I love that timing. That makes my witchy heart so happy. Or my astronomer heart so happy. Or whatever you want to call it. Earth mama, hippie chick, live on a farm heart happy. I love that timing. So you have to match up to one of the color palettes that they have suggested. And they didn't have a whole lot of rules on there, so I don't know if you can have multiple objects. But I thought, okay, I am going to try. I'm going to start with something easy. I had showed the Rizza Knits Crosshatch hat, and the pattern's buried over there where I would show it. I showed it a couple of weeks ago. But I wanted to make that hat, and I'd kind of been thinking about using that yarn because it is a fingering weight hat. So I had bought this colorway from Expressions Fiber Arts again. This is Lucky Ducklings. Okay, Lucky Ducklings, and it definitely is fall, and so I haven't matched it up to any of the palettes just yet, but I'm pretty sure I can do that without any trouble. So again, this is their Resilient Superwash Merino sock. Okay, and yeah, and it's 400 yards and 100 grams. So I don't know if she still has this colorway or not, because I bought it a couple of months ago. So again, if I get it done in time, it qualifies for the summer stash down too. So Colors of Fall knit along on the Yarniacs podcast. They are an audio podcast, and they have a Ravelry group also. So that's what I'm going to do for that. Now, if they take multiple entries and I get done in time, I talked about knitting the Tracy back back toward the beginning of me doing all this, which is a pattern by Johi Locatelli. I had knit the Jody earlier this year, and I had talked about knitting the Tracy. And I had purchased, again, from Expressions Fiber Arts. This is one of her charity yarns that benefits the World Wildlife Fund, and this is called Snow Leopard. I had shown this before. And it's kind of hard to tell from the lighting, but if you look through this, every once in a while there's some sort of purpley mauve shot through it. So I was at my local yarn store one day, and I found this to go with it. This is a This is Primrose Yarn Company. The colorway is called Blackberry, and this is their Sophia base. So this is 80% superwash merino, 10% cashmere, 10% nylon, and then this is another. Most of her endangered animal yarn or her World Wildlife Fund yarn is the 50-50 merino and silk. So I thought that those would look good together, and I'm pretty sure that will also match the color palette for the colors of fall knit along, and I think that'll be pretty for that Tracy shawl. So we'll see if I get that far. I'm not going to put a lot of pressure on myself to do it. I'm going to start with the hat first because it's smaller and get it done sooner, right? Anyway, so yeah, so I'm going to do that, and so that is the colors of fall knit along that starts June 21st. So you got about a month to do some planning for that. Now, starting on June 1st, because you know I need some more to do, Rizza Knits is having a walk the block MKAL, and the idea is the pattern is going to be simple enough that you can actually get out and walk or be active with your knitting. And 6 and 7 fibers did have some kits. I don't think they're available anymore, but the idea is they had 12 mini skeins, okay? But she said you could use 3 full-size skeins or however you want to do it. So I had bought these 3 colors to go together, and I had showed these some time ago also. And I said, I don't know what I'm going to do with them, but the right thing will come along. Well, I believe it has, okay? So I've got these 3 colors to go together. All right. This one is, again, Primrose Yarn Company Sophia in the colorway Bird Set Free. Okay, Bird Set Free. It's got some of the purple and green and blue and hot pink speckling in it. Then this is Kim Marie's Knit Knacks, and this is her Brazos base. Okay, and this is Fancy a Game of Clue. Alright. And then this is Kim Marie Knit Knacks. And I just noticed this is DK, so this may not work. I may have to rethink that choice. Although they look kind of the same thickness, but anyway, we'll see. And then this one is Kim Marie Knit Knacks Area 51. And this is the one I'm using also in my Helen Stewart knit along. This is fingering, so these 2 are fingering. I didn't pay attention, so I may have to go find something to use for this. But anyway, so I'm going to try that for the Walk the Block MKAL. I pre-purchased. That pattern is available for pre-purchase on Rizza Knits Ravelry page. So go check it out. Okay, so that's my yarny future crafting, and if that's all you're interested in, the rest of my future crafting is going to be more sewing related. So if you're moving on, thanks for stopping by. My acquisitions this week don't have any yarniness to them, so I'll see you hopefully next time. And if you're sticking around, yay. Okay, so future crafting is, I'm going to show you some more things that I want to try to make. I want to make myself an apron, and I made an apron about 3 years ago for somebody. I did an apron swap. I do an apron swap sort of every other spring here on my farm, where we have people show up and they're supposed to either bring a vintage apron, or they can buy an apron and embellish it, or they can sew an apron, and then we basically just do kind of like a draw a number, you get this bag, or choose this bag. Okay, and I had made an apron out of this fabric for that apron swap, and I have wanted one myself out of it ever since. So I had ordered the fabric. Now the way the apron is made is it is a lined apron, and so you have a contrast lining, and that contrast makes a pocket on the front. So this is the fabric that I bought to go with that. It's part of the same collection. These are Michael Miller fabrics. So that's going to be my contrast fabric. Alright. And I bought quite a bit of both of these, although it takes a fair bit to make those aprons, because it's a full apron with the bib, and then it's a wrap around the back type thing. So it takes quite a bit to fit my size. But so that's something I've got pretty high on the priority list for my apron collection, because I've had that for quite a while. Now, I had talked about the printed panels last week, and I pulled a couple of more of those out of my pile of doom for the fair. Keeping in the theme of turkeys, this is a wall panel. This is a wall decoration, and quite a few of these panels are sort of wall hangings that you can get that are holiday themed. So in keeping with the turkey theme, this is Tillman turkey. Tillman tea turkey. Okay? And if you look at it, you cut out all these parts, and then his legs are baler twine, or not baler twine, but twine. Used to be baler twine. Baler twine used to be sisal. Now it's plastic, although you can still get sisal, I think. But anyway, so Tillman turkey, that's what it looks like. And then here's all the pieces that you cut out. Okay? So he's holding a couple ears of ornamental corn. All right? He's got on some overalls. And that's going to be one of the things that I would like to make, for because I don't have a lot of Thanksgiving or harvest type decorations. So I need to sort of amp up that area. I have way more Halloween and Christmas stuff. If I'm still doing this at Christmas time and Halloween, you will see the true level of my zeal, I guess, for those holidays. All right. Now, as I had mentioned last time, there's a lot of different categories that you can enter in, and there's several different Christmas categories. So this is one of the things I want to make. This is a teddy bear that is a patchwork Christmas teddy. It's got on a pretty little patchwork Christmas coat. So that would go in the soft toys category, or it could be a Christmas craft. I'll have to look at the book and see. I got to dig out my old copy of the fair book and start strategizing here pretty soon, figuring out what I'm going to do. So that's another VIP panel. Now, I wanted to show you the potential of some of these things, just so you can get an idea. Now, if you can just make them like they are, but I like to embellish them. So this was one I made last year, okay? This is the little kitty cat ballerina doll that I made last year. Now, on the pattern, she was the kitty cat. She has a little bag, and it's laying over there. And her little dress, her little over pinafore, and then her underneath one. And then she's got little bloomers on too, okay? But in the pattern, you know, it didn't have the little tutu crinoline under it, so I put that under there. She has a little evening wrap, okay? Then I put, this lace is some vintage lace that was out of my mom's lace collection, and then so was this little blue lace on her bloomers. The ribbon is just some simple satin ribbon that I bought and added to her toe shoes, okay? Then the beads and the trim were also out of my mom's vintage trim box. So I added that. And then this ribbon, this was just off of a package ribbon that somebody had given me a gift bag. I don't throw stuff away. I keep my gift bags and recycle them, which is probably why my craft room looks like what it does. But, you know, waste not, want not. That's where the beads came from, and the trim, and she's got the trim on her belly, or on her waist there. And then I sewed her joints together with these buttons, and these are some vintage buttons from my mom's button stash. And there's the tag where I tied her tag on last year. I'm going to take that off. So anyway, so that's all extra that I added just to kind of ramp up the pattern. Okay, and she's cute. I thought she was adorable. I had two of these. A lady that I know gave me a bunch of fabric, and this was in the bag with the stuff that she gave me. So I made another one for my friend Miranda's daughter, Bailey. Okay. So, and I just used more durable stuff for it. It doesn't have all the vintage, because she just sits. I have a big cast iron, you could call it a cauldron, I suppose. It's a big, my grandmother used to have one that she cooked soap in when I was a kid. And it was probably about 3 feet wide and about 3 feet tall. And it was in our backyard at the old house, which is across the road. And I don't know what happened to it. I think she probably sold it. My grandmother had no sentimental value to anything ever. Everything had a price on it, and that drove me nuts. But me and Mrs. Hayes were at one of our favorite hole-in-the-wall junk stores called Rusty Gold. And I walked in, and there was a cast iron wash pot or cauldron or whatever you want to call it on a stand, and it had the yoke to carry it with, the carrier for it. And it's huge, and it was complete, and it's in perfect condition. And the price was right, so I snapped that sucker up in a big hurry because I knew it wouldn't be there long. And the guy said, you're not planning on putting, you know, flowers in that? Because a lot of people will buy them and put them out in their front yard and put flowers in them. This one was in too good a shape. It is sitting in my den with some of my vintage quilts rolled up in it. It's got, I put tissue paper on the inside of it just in case some stuff got on the quilt. So I put tissue paper, and I've got my vintage, and then I've got vintage toys. I've got some quilted toys that I found at Goodwill that were made out of pieces of old quilts, and she sits in there with them. Okay, so she just gets to sit there and look pretty. Then the other thing that I made, and these are actually something that I did really well at the fair with. This was from my mother's stuff. These two little Santa Clauses. Now, again, the panels were just the beard, you know, their bodies and everything. They didn't have the fur trim. I had some faux fur trim that I added to their coats. Okay. Then these buttons are vintage mother of pearl buttons out of my mom's sewing box. Alright. Their little beards are just fabric strips. Okay. Added jingle bells to the back of their hats with some cute little button embellishments. And then I made these little things for them to hold. The little buttons. This one says believe, and I think both of them say believe. Okay. And then I put doll pellets in them to weight them so that they would stand up. I actually won Best in Show with these a couple of years ago at the fair. I guess it was 2015 when I won Best in Show with it. I was so shocked. I went in there with the person I was dating at the time, and we were walking around because they open, you take your home ec entries, like I mentioned, you take those on Tuesday evening, or Tuesday, you can go all day Tuesday between 9 and 6, and then the next day is all the judging, so you can't go into the building until like 5 or 6 o'clock at night because they're in there judging during the day. And so as soon as the building opened, you know, I happened to be up there for some reason, I can't remember. I was showing a sheep. And so we were up there shearing the sheep, getting her clipped, ready for the show. And it was one of his sheep that I was showing. So we were up there for that. And we got her settled into her pen. And so I said, let's go over and look. Well, we're walking around looking at all the stuff, seeing how I did. And I couldn't find these. And I'm like, what happened to my Santa Clauses? And these were cut out in my mom's stuff, you know, after she passed away. And I found them and finished them. And when I saw that Best of Show ribbon on those, I still get kind of choked up thinking about it. I was so overwhelmed that me and my mom together did this. Okay? So anyway, so that's, you know, that it's the extras that make these things special to me when you make these printed panels. I mean, you can do just what they are, and that's perfectly fine. But to me, it's the extras that make these guys special. So I leave those in my sewing room all year long as kind of inspiration for what I can do. So let me see if I can find a place to sit them down. Okay. So, yeah, so that's kind of all of my future crafting. So let's come back and talk a little bit about some acquisitions. Okay, guys, it's time to talk a little bit about some science stuff. I'll talk about my professorness first. We are the first week through a 3-week-long intercession online class that I'm teaching. I got up early this morning to do a couple of things that I'll get into talking about farm life. And I went ahead and did the grading for the first week of the class. You know, there's a learning curve for people, and unfortunately a lot of people take this class because usually they get down to the end and they don't realize they need this general education credit to graduate. And I get a few people in here who have never taken an online class, and unfortunately this is not the class to learn the ups and downs really of doing online classes, because it's only 3 weeks long. Basically move 5 times as fast as you do in the regular semester in this class. There is no time to blink. I mean, no time. But anyway, many of them seem to be doing okay. I noticed when I was grading stuff, there were a couple of students I hadn't gotten anything from. So that's not a good sign, but we'll see. Got that through. We are in our second week of big planetarium shows, where we are, or no, this is the third week. This is the third week of big planetarium shows, where we have school groups coming through. You know, they're down toward the end of the semester, and there is not a lot of, I guess, concentrated learning that goes on, and the kids are tired and the teachers are tired, so they're bringing them on field trips, and we've had groups every day for the last 2 weeks, and next week we are booked, or this week we are booked solid. I've got one show Tuesday and one show Thursday, and then we're done with that for the year, and I will not have to drive down to Conway anymore, except for just kind of some one-off things here and there over the course of the summer. So I'm pretty excited about that, you know, because it will be a savings in gas and in my time. So I'm excited about that. And yeah, so last week I had mentioned I didn't know what the difference between polyamide and nylon is. Nylon is a polyamide. Now, it's kind of like all squares are rectangles, but not all rectangles are squares, or excuse me, all squares are quadrilaterals, and not all quadrilaterals are squares, I guess I should say. Polyamide is a broad category of macromolecules, and it tends to be, in nature, there's naturally occurring polyamides, and guess what 2 of them are? Wool and silk. They are proteins that have a certain kind of bonding in them, amide bonds. I don't know what those are. I read the information on them, and I still don't know what those are because that's not my deal. I am a physicist, not a chemist. But anyway, nylon is a polyamide. So when you read that on a tag, that is a form of, you know, nylon is a form of that. So I'm not quite sure why they put that unless it's a proprietary blend or something like that. So there you go. The more you know, right? Little whoosh star. I had also mentioned last week about red oaks versus white oaks. I had been talking about the acorns, and the acorns of the white oak are much less bitter and have less tannin in them than the red oaks. And I said there's a way you could tell them apart through tree identifications. And one of the easiest ways to tell them apart is through their leaves. Now these are, I happen to have both of these trees are right out my window here in my front yard. Okay. These are both oak leaves, and there are 40 species of oaks in Arkansas, but they can be broken down into either red oak or white oak varieties, okay? Red oak leaves are more angular, and then if you look on the end here, see the little pointy tip? They always have that little tip on the end of them, on the end of the leaf. Okay, so red oak leaves are always much more slender and much more angular and have the little pointy tip. And red oaks, there's different varieties of red oaks. There's the eastern red oak. There are pin oaks, which people think pin oaks are the oaks with the long skinny leaves. Those are actually willow oaks. And willow oaks, the leaves don't look anything like this. They look like long, slender willow leaves, but they are an oak tree. And they are also a variety of red oak. So this is a red oak leaf. Then white oak leaves do not have the burr on the end of them or the tip, and they are much more rounded or lobed looking. Okay, and varieties of white oak include the post oak, the blackjack oak, and then the burr oak. And the burr oak is the one that has the acorns that have the really fuzzy burry caps on them. So you can tell when you look at your oak leaves, you can tell really quickly white oak, red oak. Okay, so there you go. So that's kind of my sciencey stuff for this week. It's kind of short and sweet this week, and we're going to come back and we're going to talk about farm and country life out here. So. Okay, so the first thing that I'll talk about is this week, or last weekend, excuse me, I should say, last Friday and Saturday was Pickle Fest. And you may be like, what the heck is Pickle Fest? Well, I did a short little video that I'm going to insert at the end, but just the kind of the rundown is, for many, many years, the major employer in my town, in my hometown, was Atkins Pickle Company, okay, the pickle plant. And all through my growing up years, my mother even worked there before she met my dad. All through my growing up years, that was the big employer in town. You worked there in the summers. If you looked for a summer job, a lot of people worked there when they got out of school. It was a good gig. And the pickle company was built by the town after World War II to kind of bring some industry back into the town and bring some employment back into the town. And I remember when I was a little kid at the bank, there was a huge display of all the different sort of specialty pickle products that they made, because it wasn't just pickles. It wasn't just like Vlasic pickles. They made all sorts of specialty pickled products that no one else made and that they were kind of world renowned for. And then eventually, a lot of times what happens, there was a corporate buyout and then it changed hands and the pickle plant is no more. But the Pickle Fest had started back when I was in college. And it's just a small town festival. It's one of those small town festivals where there's a beauty pageant with it, and there's a rodeo, and there's a parade, and there's a car show, and there's a sort of a vendor arts and crafts fair. And all the local politicians are there asking for your vote and stuff, because we're getting close to election time here locally. So that was this Friday and Saturday, and me and Mrs. Hayes decided that we were going to go very early on Friday. And we had objectives, okay? I was going because I wanted to go support the dog rescue and buy some things from them and make a donation. And I wanted a Bewley's Tasty Burger burrito. And Miss Hayes was going so she could support the dog rescue. And she wanted some famous Loner Drive-In Fat Man Austin. That was his name. That was his nickname, was Fat Man. Fried dill pickles. And so we achieve that objective. Now, the Tasty Burger was a local restaurant that was owned by a family, and it was sort of a town icon, as was the Loner Drive-In. Those were two town icons. And the Tasty Burger was famous for its burritos. And so what has happened is they have sold the recipe to a couple of different groups as a fundraiser. And so one of the local church groups had a booth there, and they were selling the Tasty Burger burritos and a drink and chips or something for like $5. And then they had fried dill pickles there also, and they had funnel cakes. And the local, one of the local progressive men's clubs had a barbecue stand, but they weren't open yet. So we walked around and looked at the vendors, and there wasn't a whole lot of vendors there. It was sort of more kind of flea market-y, junk stuff, and not the kind of junk that I like. So I was kind of underwhelmed by that. And then, of course, all the local politicians were there politicking, so, and they tried to get me to stop and talk to them, like, no, thanks. But anyway, so then we left and we said, well, let's go do some junking. So we went to our very favorite local thrift store, which was Marva. I mentioned it, I believe, last week. And Miss Hayes, I was kind of looking around and I didn't really see a whole lot. Miss Hayes picked up a basket. Now, I didn't see this basket or I'd have snapped it up, but she picked it up, and it was made by a gentleman who is very famous in the Ozarks for making oak baskets. And it was signed on the bottom. Well, the lady said, oh, someone brought that in, and also they brought a portrait of that man in. And they went and got it for us. And so I got it. So let me see if I can reach. Excuse me, Willie. Let me see if I can reach back here and get it. So I didn't get the basket, but I already have one of his baskets. I have a basket that I bought of his at a flea market. But this is the portrait. And this is John Hampton, and he's one of the basket weavers at Ozark Mountain Crafts. And he and his wife started that, okay? And they live on the side of what's called Scenic Highway 7, which is sort of an iconic road here in Arkansas. It goes up through the Ozark Mountains. It's a beautiful drive. And it goes up to Branson. It's one of the ways you can get to Branson, although now there's a big 4-lane highway that goes up there, so it's not nearly as busy. So Mr. Hampton started this crafting to raise some money, okay? And what I like about it is on the back of it, it has some neat words. It has a little piece about the artist. And Mr. Hampton has a neat quote on here that I want to share with you. Okay, it says, I want people to be able to look at my work and remember what life was like and still is in many places in the Ozarks. I think that it is sad that most of our children will grow up never knowing what it's like to go out in the morning and get fresh eggs from their own chickens for breakfast, to spend the day hanging out with at your own private swimming hole, or to catch fresh catfish in your backyard for dinner. To help Dad cut and haul firewood in the forest, and help Mom can blackberries and make fresh bread in the kitchen. There are just a few things in life worth holding on to, and sometimes it seems like we're losing the best of them. That pretty well sums up my philosophy about the reason that I do the things that I do on the farm, so I had to pick that up. So, Ms. Hayes got one of his baskets. I also have one of his baskets. Then we went to a flea market, or not a flea market, a yard sale that was actually just down the road from her, and she had seen a fainting couch at it that she really wanted to get. And when we drove by, I said, ooh, stop, because I saw two baskets sitting by the side of the road. And I'm getting better now about being able to spot handmade baskets. So this was the first one that I saw. Now this one is not signed, or at least I couldn't see it if it was. Okay, this one is not signed, but it is clearly handmade. And it is a great size. And it's a garden gathering basket, so it's open on the bottom so that the dirt and stuff will fall through when you go out and pick your vegetables or pick flowers or whatever. Okay, and it's a great cat trap. I sat these down, and I mean, it wasn't 2 seconds and I had cats in them. Then I saw this basket, and this is an egg basket. It's shaped like this so the eggs can nestle down in it. Okay, and this is also handmade, and it's made by Mr. Hampton. So now I have another one of his baskets and the picture all to go together, and I'm very delighted about that. I was listening to Vanessa talk about maybe bullet journaling, and I don't know that I could ever get into bullet journaling like as a task list, but last time when I was talking about documenting, I want to start journaling some of the things that I have and some of the stories that go along with them. I think sort of to inventory my stuff, okay? That's going to be a huge task, but no time like the present, right? So I may start doing, she kind of gave me some inspiration there that I may start doing that. We had also gone to an estate sale, and it was kind of like looking into my future. There was a little old lady that I guess had died, or maybe she went into the nursing home, I don't know. But she had a lot of things, okay? She had a lot of plates and dessert sets and, you know, mason jars, and I mean there were cases of mason jars, and I should have bought some, but I did actually buy some at the same place I bought that basket. I bought some cases of jars. But there was a room full of fabric and sewing stuff. Now the fabric was double knit and polyester, and I really don't like working with it, so I didn't buy any fabric. But I did go into her pictures, and I found this piece of needlework that she had done. So I purchased that to kind of honor her. And in my hallway, I have sort of a gallery of thrift store, flea market, garage sale artwork. And it's both handwork and then paintings and things that I have bought. And I also bought a couple of other pieces of artwork. They're, you know, nothing hugely extravagant, but some pretty stuff that I thought was neat. So I'm going to hang those out in my hallway in my art gallery. Okay, so let's see. Now, what else is going on here on the farm? Well, I finally got my garden all in. Okay, I got all my plants set out, and I got all my seeds planted, except I'm still debating on whether I want to plant the ornamental corn, the glass gem corn or not. I've got my seeds, and I'm trying to figure out where I would want to do that. So I'm still kind of up in the air on that, but we'll see. So I did get that done. And I'm kind of doing a few things different this year. I've moved some, of course you need to rotate your crops anyway, But I'm doing some things in some big containers. I feed my cattle mineral in these big, huge mineral tubs. And I've put some soil in those and some compost. And I'm planting some things in those to see how they work out. And then I have potato bins where I take wire and I fill them with straw and compost. And that's what I plant my potatoes in. And I planted my potatoes and my sweet potatoes in there. Every time I plant sweet potatoes, I have to laugh because my granddad would get the garden done. And, you know, and we used to plow our garden with a mule. I mean, he either would borrow a mule or somebody would come around with a mule, or we ended up getting a donkey at one point. And even one of my ponies was broke to harness, and we'd plow our garden with that. And he'd get that garden put in, and he would always ask my grandmother, "Are you sure this is it? Are you sure this is it?" And then I swear every time he would get that garden done and he would be done, and here she'd come with sweet potato slips. Here she come, and I don't know how the woman got them. She didn't drive. She didn't go anywhere to get them. They just magically appeared out of nowhere, out of thin air, these sweet potato slips. So every time I plant those, I think about him having a cow every time she'd come up with those. Then I got my bees taken care of. On Sunday, I put the second box on my 2 new hives, and then I gave my existing hives some probiotics and kind of just checked on everybody and made sure everybody's doing good. The new hives are very busy. They are looking good. They are already putting honey up. Right now there's a big nectar flow going because the blackberries are just about done blooming, and the honeysuckle is blooming like crazy, and so is the privet. And that is the only redeeming thing about privet, is the bees can use it. But anyway, so the bees are doing really good. I've been enjoying watching them. I think the 2 new hives seem to be doing well, so I'm excited about that. I noticed out in the garden my elderflower is starting to bloom, so I'm going to be putting up some elderflower stuff here pretty soon. The flowers are just starting to open up, so I'm going to give it a little bit of time. My strawberries are coming on pretty good. The blueberries are almost ripe, so I'm excited about that. This morning, I got up very early because I had an appointment at the processor for 2 steers. And so the way that you can take them down there, you can either take them the day before or you can take them the day of the appointment. And I don't like to take them the day before. I like to take them at the very last minute. Now, I don't want to get into a big conversation or discussion about who eats what and what you should eat and what you shouldn't eat and all this. You eat what you like to eat, and I'll eat what I eat. But one of the things that I decided when I moved home is I feel like we in general are too divorced from where our food comes from. Whether you're an omnivore like I am, or you're a vegetarian, or you're a vegan, I suspect that the vast majority of people that you would ask about where does that food come from couldn't really give you a very good answer. And so I decided when I moved home, whether it was meat or eggs or vegetables or cheese or milk or whatever, I wanted to source as much of what I ate as locally as possible. And so I made the very challenging decision. I made 2 very challenging decisions for me. The first one was I was going to, instead of what we had done all up my childhood and growing up years up till then, was when we would have calves for sale, we would just sell them at the sale barn, and then whoever would buy them, and they would take them to a feedlot, and you know, whatever. We would just sell it to those, and we'd take our check and go. And I decided I did not want to do that anymore, for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's more cost effective if you're going to be a beef eater to raise your own beef than it is to buy it in the store. It is much better quality. Plus, I don't like the idea of my calves being loaded on first of all, going through the stress of going to the sale barn, being stood around down there and run through those pens and not treated very well, then loaded onto those trucks and having to drive hundreds of miles and not treated very well, standing around a feedlot, and then going to this huge industrial slaughterhouse. You know, I don't like that idea. So I decided that I would start selling grass-fed beef, and I would sell directly to the customers. Now, the way that I do it is I sell a share, and so you essentially buy the animal from me, and then I provide the transportation to the processor, and then I pick the beef up and bring it to you once it's processed. So I have a much more direct contact with what that animal has to go through for me to be able to eat. And to me, that's really important. If I'm going to be an omnivore, and I am an omnivore, and you know, I don't judge anybody for what they eat, and I don't want to be judged for how I eat, I feel like I need to have an understanding and a respect for what that animal has to give up so that I can go on with my life. And I wrote about this on my farm page about when you are a farmer, you are a steward of life and death. You bring animals into this world, you help them through their lives, and many times we're the ones that shepherd them out of this world, whether it's to relieve them from suffering or because we are going to use them for food. And I don't do this lightly. You know, there is a definite solemnity to what I do on days like this. And it's not the easiest thing you'll ever do, but if you're going to eat meat, to me, you need to understand what an animal has to go through. I have processed pigs, I have processed chickens, I have done rabbits, fish. I've never done a beef, but I have watched it being done. Because I think I owe the animal that. I need to understand the sacrifice. And you know, one day it'll be my turn to die and to go back to the earth and to feed the earth. So, you know, we are all food for something. I guess you could put it that way. That's kind of a serious topic. I'm sorry. But, so I did that this morning. My neighbor came over and helped me, thank goodness, because those were two of the most mean steers I have ever raised in my life. I've had one every now and then put me over the fence where I've had to climb over the fence to get out of the way when I'm trying to load them. These ones we were constantly on our guard. I have never had two that aggressive ever. And I don't know if it's because of the time of year or because I have a lot more bull calves and they're just all feeling their oats or whatever. But it was scary a couple of times. I mean, I got banged up climbing over the fence a couple of times. They never got close to us, but they surely put us on the move, as my dad would say. So there's several good articles about my philosophy about this. I will link a couple of things on my page. But, you know, small farmers, you know, we don't do what we do lightly. And the small farmers, I like eating more locally, whether it's the vegetables that I buy or the fruits that I buy or, you know, milks or cheeses or bread or whatever. I try to make as much as I can, or I try to grow what I can, whether it's the meat or the vegetables or the fruit or whatever. And it's also the reason why I made the conscious choice to start hunting. You know, I never was interested in hunting, but I thought, you know, if you're going to eat meat, to me, it made sense for me to not be, I would see myself as a hypocrite if I wasn't willing to do the hard work, do the hard part. And so I started hunting in 2009, and I don't enjoy it. I mean, I don't take joy in it. It's not easy for me to do, but I do it because partly it's good management of the deer herds, because, you know, you get too many deer, you start getting chronic wasting disease. And partly, if I'm going to be an omnivore, I need to be a responsible omnivore, and I need to understand what's going on. So, anyway, like I said, I don't want to start a big discussion or a big debate about what you eat or how you eat or what you don't eat or whatever, you know, but that's what I do. I raise beef cattle, and that's part of it. I mean, that's part of what you do. If you're going to raise beef cattle, you have to raise beef cattle, and that's part of the job. So, anyway, so I took care of that this morning. And then, and one thing that I liked, the last thing that I'll say is there's a neat article about a farm, and it said everyone gets a name. There's no numbers here. Everybody has a name. So, you have to respect the sacrifice. And I do. Okay. Alright, but anyway, so now on to a little bit less serious subjects. I have been making more stuff here on the farm. I didn't bring everything back here because I've got some soap that's still setting up. But I made some more first aid balm. I had mentioned this last week. I made some more of this, which is the yarrow and narrow-leafed plantain or ribwort, whatever you want to call it, steeped in oil or infused in oil, and then mixed with, you do 2 cups of the infusion to 2 ounces of beeswax, and you melt it together, and then you put it in your jar and let it set up, and it does work. I have been using it on some bug bites that I had. Then I made, I had mentioned making honeysuckle syrup last week, so this week I made honeysuckle jelly. So that's your honeysuckle jelly. Okay, and this set up a little bit better than the other jelly that I had made. Now you'll notice that I don't have a ring on this jar. See how this jar has a ring on it? You shouldn't store jars with rings on them, okay? Because the heat sets them. So this jar is sealed. But if this jar is some lemon balm jelly that I just made today, so in 24 hours I will take this ring off to store my jars. Because what the ring can do is make it act like the jar is sealed when it's really not. Okay, now with jellies and fruits, the acid content is high enough that you don't really have to worry about botulism. But with vegetables or meats or soups, you do. So you take the ring off before you store it. And you also do not stack your jars. Okay, you don't stack them up to store them, or at least I don't. I don't think it's a good idea to stack them up to store them. Now, stuff like this that doesn't have to be sealed, this balm, yeah, I'll stack those all day long. But when I have pressure sealed jars, I don't stack them. Okay, all right. Then I had some in the freezer. I had some jalapenos left from last summer. I had a couple of gallon bags of frozen jalapenos, so I made jalapeno jelly. Now, you may say, what the heck are you using that for? This is the bomb if you get a thing of cream cheese and pour this over it and then use it as a dip. This is awesome. Or if you're grilling pork chops or fish or something, you can drizzle this over it like a marinade. Oh, it's so good. This is hot pepper jelly. Okay, you can see the peppers in there. Then I also took some of those same jalapenos and made what I call cowboy candy, which is bread and butter or pickled jalapenos. So they're sweet. They're like bread and butter pickles, but they're jalapenos. And it's got some other stuff in it too, but basically it's a bread and butter mixture. Okay, so I made those in the last couple of days. Then I packaged up the last of my lip balm. Okay, so I had bought the little pots that I showed last week. So there's my lip balm. It had a bubble in it, so that's why it's got the little hole in it. This is my beeswax and honey and a little bit of peppermint and lavender oil. Oh, it's so good. Now, this is not something I made recently, but it is something that I wanted to show you how to make. This is a rosemary salt. I had a big rosemary bush last year, and I didn't know what all to do with the herbs. I mean, you can only dry so much and everything, so I thought, well, I'll make some flavored salts. Okay, or you can make a compound butter. But I took the rosemary and I chopped it up, and I put it in a big bowl, and I put it in with some just plain salt that I bought at the grocery store. You can use sea salt, you can use kosher salt, you can use whatever. And then I put a little bit of lime juice in it too. And you talk about the bomb when you are grilling meat or you are roasting a chicken or a turkey or something like that to rub this on the skin. Oh, or fish. Oh my God, this is good. Very easy to do. So all you do is you take the salt, the rosemary, and the lime juice, and you mix it together and you just let it sit in a bowl. I had it in a sealed bowl, and I finally got it down to a little enough amount that I can reuse a spice shaker that I had. So I just reused one of my spice jar shakers for that. So those are some things that you can make for yourself. I've got some more soap, but like I said, it is still setting up. I made some oatmeal and honey exfoliating soap, and then I've got another round of soap that I want to make that's going to be rosemary and mint soap, because I've got some rosemary oil that I infused, and then I've got some peppermint oil. And I mentioned last week, I actually said this backwards. You always add lye to water, okay? Lye to water is the way to do it. You add it a little bit at a time, and I put it on my stove and turn the exhaust fan on, because it will make fumes and you don't want to be standing right over it when you're doing it. So I always turn my exhaust fan on when I'm doing that. So anyway, so yeah, so we'll come back and we'll end up with a few final thoughts. Okay, so on my final thoughts today, I wanted to share this book that I got. I'm actually going to give this to my friend Sasha. It is a Cherokee tale called The First Strawberries. And in this book, it supposedly describes the origins of some of the different fruits, like blackberries and blueberries and things. And it talked about, in the beginning, the Creator made a man and a woman, and they were very happy together. But then one day the woman was out picking pretty flowers, and the man was hungry, and he got a little short with her, and it made her mad, so she left. She said, "Your words hurt me. I will live with you no longer." And she said, "See ya." Okay. And what it was is through the process of him going after her, he begged the son to try to help him once he felt some remorse. And so she tried to, the sun shone down on the earth, and from wherever the sun shone, first raspberries sprang up, and then blueberries sprang up, and then blackberries sprang up. And so there's the different fruits springing up. But she was still too mad to see these things. And then finally the sun gave it all it had, and that's where strawberries came from. And the strawberries, because they're red, they glowed like fire, and the woman was distracted and stopped. And eating the strawberries, the sweetness of the fruit made her forget her angry thoughts and angry words. And she started picking the berries, and then while she was picking, he catches up to her, and he said, "Forgive me for my harsh words," and she shared the strawberries with him to sweeten their life again. And so that was how strawberries came into the world. And what I liked at the end was it said, "To this day, when the Cherokee people eat strawberries, they were reminded to always be kind to each other, to remember that friendship and respect, to remember that friendship and respect are as sweet as the taste of red ripe berries." And to me, this goes along with what I was talking about in the prior segment about being mindful. Okay, when you eat the food, be in moment. So many times when we eat, we just grab something through a drive-through and shove it in our mouth, and we don't think about what it is or how it could affect our bodies, or we don't even enjoy the taste of it. We're just trying to say we ate something. We don't think about where it came from or what effort it took to get that food to us. So I challenge you for the next little while, when you're eating, think about that food. Be present with that food. What did it take for that food to get to your store or to your home? Did you grow that food? Did someone else grow that food for you? What about that person? What about the people who planted that food and harvested that food? And where did those seeds come from? We talked about seed swap a couple of weeks ago. What's the lineage of that food? What's the history of that food? Why is that food being grown where it is? If you're eating animal products, what did that animal have to sacrifice for you to be able to enjoy the steak or the cheese or the honey or the eggs? Be mindful of your food. I think if we were all a little bit more mindful and we understood the sacrifice, things would be different in this world. The other thing is, as much as possible, I encourage you to establish relationships with local food producers. I shared a thing on my Facebook page about another family farm going under. And unfortunately, that is the way it seems. A family farm is becoming an endangered species. We can't compete at the big levels with the big corporate farms. We just can't do it. Sometimes it does cost more for you to buy directly from a small family farmer, but I promise you, you are changing lives when you do that, because more of that money goes in their pocket. Generally, the land and the animals are treated with much more reverence and respect, and you are supporting your local community. So I guess I said all this to say mindfulness is a good thing. Okay, don't just go through the drive-thru and shove a 99-cent burger in your face and not, I mean, even that can be savored in a way, you know. This book talked about the sweetness of their life together. So, you know, when you're having food with friends or family, be present, be in that moment. You know, try to put your phone down. You know, try to quit worrying about who's texting or who's liking your post or whatever. And I'm just as bad as the next person about that. But I encourage you to be mindful. And yeah, so that I didn't know which direction I was going to go with that, but I think it turned out okay. Anyway, so I hope you guys are all doing good. I hope you're meeting your crafting goals or your farming goals or whatever you're trying to do this week. And I hope you enjoyed spending some time with me. And I enjoyed getting to talk with y'all a little while. And if you enjoyed the class, I would hope, or the class, I looked down at my notes and I saw where it said online class. If you enjoyed the podcast, I would hope that you would share it with people. I appreciate y'all listening every week. And until I see y'all again, be good to each other, take care of each other, and peace out. Bye. Hey guys, it's Deborah, and today I'm doing a little short video. It's Pickle Fest. The town that I grew up in and live in now is Adkins, and one of the claims to fame of Adkins for a lot of years was we were the home of the Adkins Pickle Company. After World War II, the town had kind of declined and needed an industry, and so people kind of put their money together in the town and opened the pickle plant. And pickle plant was kind of the linchpin of the town. You could smell pickles all over town. The bank used to have a big display of all the different products that they made, and they made a lot of specialty products, not just pickles, but they made dozens of specialty products that other companies didn't provide. And you know, people worked there. That was where they'd worked their entire life, because that was kind of the industry in the town. You'd see the cucumber trucks. I remember one time when I was working for the highway department for the summer, we were coming through the next town over, which is called Blackwell, and there was a train stopped, and it had like lumber on the side of it, and it had hit a cucumber truck crossing the tracks. No one was hurt. There were cucumbers everywhere in downtown, and people were out there with sacks picking them up, you know, couldn't let them go to waste. But anyway, so they started Pickle Fest several years ago, and I remember when I was living in Oklahoma, I was driving home from work one day and I was listening to NPR, and it was in 2001, I believe, and they were interviewing the mayor of my hometown because they were closing the pickle factory. They were closing the pickle plant, and that was sort of pretty devastating to the town. It changed hands a couple of times. It went through a corporate buyout, and then now it's a frozen food place. But anyway, they still have Pickle Fest, and it's an arts and crafts fair. You can go get fair food, and of course they have the rodeo and the pageant and all that stuff that goes with it too. So I'm gonna try to take some video and some pictures as long as my phone will last, and y'all come on out to Pickle Fest. I'm over at Miss Betsy's house, and we're just gonna walk because it's right across the railroad tracks, and you can't park for nothing because all the local politicians are here politicking. So anyway, we're going to Pickle Fest.